Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. There were a bunch of Star Wars announcements this week. Ahsoka Season 2, The Mandalorian Season 4 details. Dave Filoni basically just became the Kevin Feige of all Star Wars. Like, he just took control of all of Star Wars, which a lot of us assumed had either already happened or would happen pretty soon. So we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I'll be doing Mandalorian Season 4 videos, Ahsoka Season 2 as we get more details, and we have the Skeleton Crew series, which is a Mandalorian spin-off that'll be happening early next year too. I will do episode videos for everything they wind up releasing. Don't worry, we'll get more trailers for that pretty soon. But starting with the big stuff first, Dave Filoni basically taking over all of Star Wars. What just happened is that Dave Filoni did this big interview for Ahsoka Season 2, like right after the Ahsoka finale, but it sounds like they held the interview till after the strikes had finished because there were a bunch of announcements that Lucasfilm was sitting on and a bunch of projects that were waiting to actually get started till after the strikes, so they just waited till after the strikes to release the interview where he was talking about all these upcoming projects.
One of the terms we use is, the war between the New Republic and the Remnant Empire. So we're going to see, you need a conflict. And I'm, just kind of looking at a lot of the things that were written over the years in various expanded universe projects, trying not just to look at what John and I did, but we're looking at what was done kind of historically in the time period as a guide. I think for generations of Star Wars fans before the era of, episodes 7, 8, and 9, that was what we saw as the post-Return of the Jedi era when you're talking about story and characters in the expanded universe. So there's a treasure of things to draw from, not just within our own series, but in the bigger galaxy.
But basically, after Ahsoka Season 1 finished, they had already soft greenlit Ahsoka Season 2. Dave Filoni had been working on the scripts for Season 2 for a while, but they still needed a lot of work. Then the strikes happened, so they had to pause all development for a while. Same thing with The Mandalorian Season 4. Like, they couldn't actually start filming Season 4 until after the strikes had finished, which they are now, thankfully. But Dave Filoni explained that before this year, what used to happen is that he served as sort of like a creative director role behind the scenes with all Star Wars projects, like all the movies and the TV shows, but they'd only bring him in for his creative input to try and fix things or make things better after the projects had already gotten started. Really good example of that is the Star Wars sequel trilogy of movies, Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, even stuff like Rogue One, the Han Solo movie. He's been a co-creator and a co-showrunner on The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau and all the animated shows. He's been showrunning the Ahsoka series by himself without Jon Favreau's help. So some of that stuff he was working on from day one, like some of the stuff he helped develop himself. But all the other shows like Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the movies, they'd bring him in later in the process and he'd try and help them make the movies better, fix problems. Same thing with the TV shows. So a lot of times there were issues that he couldn't really address because they were too far along in the process. Like when it came to the sequel trilogy of movies, they had already laid so much track and there was so much work that had already been done that they could only do so much to make the movies better after the fact. What he himself basically just revealed, though, is that he'd kind of become like the Kevin Feige of Star Wars pretty recently. It sounds like it happened earlier this year and they just waited to announce it. But it was basically him getting a big promotion, so to speak, and getting creative control over all Star Wars everything. All the movies, the TV shows, publishing, everything. So whereas they'd only bring him in to get his input after stuff was up and running already, now anybody that wants to make new Star Wars movies, TV shows, anything, has to pitch him the idea first before they actually get started making it. So as part of this larger interview about the future of all Star Wars this past year, he said that he's there in the room, basically deciding on what the future of Star Wars is actually going to look like, whereas before that wasn't the case. Mostly he's talking about the movies and the TV shows. So like the last Star Wars Celebration, they announced a bunch of upcoming Star Wars movies taking place all across the timeline. Dave Filoni is basically there in the room deciding what those movies are actually going to be, what they're going to look like as the directors are hired and brought on board. This is basically them finally addressing one of the major criticisms of the sequel trilogy of movies like the past 10 years. They got started without any real clear vision on the entire story, like any real creative control. There's no actual Kevin Feige type of person in the room having that kind of control over the movies that has the creative vision to actually pull that off. For example, Kathleen Kennedy is really more of like an overseer, kind of like a glorified accountant signing all the checks. She's had creative input before, but for the most part, usually what they've done in the past, particularly with the movies, is that they'll hire directors to come on and writers and just let those directors do basically whatever they want to do. But this big upgrade that they gave to Dave Filoni kind of just happened at DC with James Gunn taking over all movies and DC shows. He's basically doing the same thing that Dave Filoni is doing now at Star Wars. And just like James Gunn, Dave Filoni is also supposed to be directing the Thrawn movie, like James Gunn is directing Superman Legacy, but he's also creatively overseeing all movies and TV shows. Same thing with the Ahsoka Season 2. Like Dave Filoni will also be the showrunner for Ahsoka Season 2, and he'll still be co-showrunner on The Mandalorian. Here's where we get to Ahsoka Season 2 and The Mandalorian Season 4. So as part of this big preview of the future Star Wars, Dave Filoni confirmed that during Ahsoka Season 2, they did plan to continue the Baylan Skoll storyline, which a lot of us believed they would. There was such a big teaser at the end of the finale. He addressed Ray Stevenson's passing, may he rest in peace. Told a couple funny stories about them talking about the character behind the scenes. Like, there was so much story that they were setting up with his character. He did say that they intended on paying that off. Now, he didn't say explicitly that they were going to recast the character, only that they would pay the story off. But I think a lot of us reading between the lines would not be surprised if they did recast the character. Basically, the last time we saw him at the end of the finale, he was standing on the statue of the Mortis gods, the Father, the Son, the Daughter, with them staring at the beacon in the distant mountain that the Father was pointing at, basically trying to enter what looked like the Mortis realm, possibly become a Mortis god, or just harness their power and, like he said, end all war all over the universe. In order to do something like that, that would be like a final solution for the entire universe. Like, you'd either have to kill a ton of people or make some massive, massive change, which would require power on the level of the Mortis gods. That's why you're seeing all this fan art of Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka in the place of the Mortis gods here. Like, they are becoming new versions of the Mortis gods. I did a bunch of separate videos about that, so I'll link them below in the description. Basically, Anakin Skywalker is sort of taking the role that the Mortis gods used to serve, kind of becoming a Mortis god, so to speak. That's basically what the Father told him during the Clone Wars, is that he was destined to essentially take their role in the universe. And that was meant to be the full, actual fulfillment of the prophecy. Not so much balancing the Jedi Order, which most people believe, but in a much more cosmic way, balance everything in the entire universe. He also did say that the development of this Peridia galaxy, them introducing this other galaxy, was a big, big, long play in the movies that they'll eventually pay off. Like, it wasn't just meant to be this one side-off thing in this Ahsoka Season 1. I think that was mostly him also talking about the Night Sisters and bringing them back in the Star Wars universe. The ancient witch kingdom of the Dathmiri. Gonna need like 2 or 3 spin-off TV shows just about them. Dave Filoni also addressed that ending scene teaser with Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka. He said the intention was for Anakin to be viewing Ahsoka after all they'd been through this season, recently with Thrawn, inside the World Between Worlds, like he was also the same Anakin that gave Ahsoka her final lesson, confirming that, like it wasn't 2 different versions of Anakin. And he was smiling here because he was happy to see that Ahsoka had become wiser through her experience and would be a much better master to her Padawan, Sabine Wren. And this was not the last we had seen of Anakin Skywalker. Now it sounds like, based on the way that they're plotting things out, is that Ahsoka Season 2 is going to fall before the Thrawn movie, and they'll use more time during that to set up the Thrawn the Night Sisters storyline inside the main galaxy, but also using some of the Mandalorian Season 4 for that too. So here's where we jump to the Mandalorian Season 4. A lot of the plot of Season 4 is supposedly going to revolve around Mando and Grogu going around looking for Thrawn, the other Imperial remnant forces, now that Ezra Bridger has told the New Republic about what's happened. So the Mandalorian Season 4 is basically taking all that story they set up at the end of Ahsoka Season 1 and running with it. Like, basically the next part of the story as we head towards the Thrawn movie. And the whole idea at the end of the Mandalorian Season 3, in this scene here, was meant to be Mando taking a job doing mercenary work for the New Republic specifically, and he'd be hunting the Imperial remnant around the Outer Rim. So it's more of like a hunter-seeker, bounty hunter type of season, kind of like Season 1, but specifically targeting Imperials. Katie Sackhoff, talking about Bo-Katan, the other Mandalorians, also said that her character was not going to be taking over the show or anything like that. So that means that there won't be that much of the Mandalorians on the Mandalore planet, but probably just like a little bit to check in with them. There was so much of them during Season 3, people are like, what's going on? Is she going to take over the TV show? According to Katie Sackhoff, that is not the case. The show is still going to be just about Din Djarin and Grogu. But because Pedro Pascal has like 3 or 4 other movies now that he's also working on and a couple other TV shows, that basically confirms that he is not going to be taking the helmet off during Season 4, probably not going to take it off until the Thrawn movie winds up happening. That's basically the way they did Season 3, so just imagine the same type of performance that he had during Season 3. Just a voiceover performance. They won't actually start filming Season 4 until early next year, but it's basically ready to go. Like, Jon Favreau had the scripts ready to go a while ago. I do not think they're going to finish special effects in time for a December release, though, so they might try to release Season 4 in early 2025, around the same time that they release Season 3. That means if they hustle, they might be able to get Ahsoka Season 2 out by the end of 2025, around the time they're trying to release that next Star Wars movie. But because the strikes delayed everything almost like a whole year, they might not release the next Star Wars movie, whatever that winds up being, until 2026. But basically, this Dave Filoni interview confirmed that the next Star Wars movie will be the one that's set in the future after the events of The Rise of Skywalker. The Thrawn movie would happen like the year after that. So set your clocks based on when that next Star Wars sequel movie winds up happening. The next big TV show that's going to be happening will be Skeleton Crew. That could be coming out sometime early 2024, maybe by the spring, so we should get a trailer for that pretty soon. There was a much bigger trailer for that earlier last year. I've already done a video for it, so I'll link it down in the description below, and the Star Wars Acolyte series, which are probably going to be releasing at some time late next year too. Whenever they wind up announcing, of course I'll do videos for it, so no worries. Click here for my other Mandalorian Season 4 teaser video and learn what's going on with Cal Kestis in live action, and click here for that Star Wars Acolyte trailer video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.